Il-ħatti tajjeb, Sinjuri, grazzi li qed issegwu il-programm. Ibqgħu magħna ħankellmu lil Attard li huwa il-fundatur ta' Mindset Malta. Thank you very much, Ken, for joining us. It's a pleasure to welcome you to my program.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the invite.
I saw you in action a few weeks ago, and I must say I was so impressed with the way you hold an audience. What projects are you working on at the moment?
So essentially, thank you very much for the compliment, and it's always good to know that someone has been impressed, let's say. Yet I'm really not out to impress. Yet what I'm all about is mindset, and mindset specifically when it comes to entrepreneurs, leaders, founders, business owners, and everybody really. Yet the way I market myself is towards these individuals, and it's the reason behind it is that I've been an entrepreneur myself for over 20 years plus in various businesses, had my successes, had my downfalls, been through the trenches, if you'd like to call it. And one thing that has been a staple for me is understanding mindset more and more, the way we think, and how powerful it truly is. Because that is what is going to have a bearing on all the experiences and the results that you are having, anybody is having in their life. It all boils down to the way you are thinking. So this is essentially what I do. I like to walk alongside entrepreneurs who sometimes, doubt themselves. And they're doing it silently. They're not even telling anybody that they're having those doubts, right? So I help them to, reconnect with a power that maybe they haven't even realized that they actually have. And ultimately, what I help them to really reconnect with is a way that they can actually lead, they can live, and they can create from a place of inner worth. And that, in its essence, is what it's all about.
You're talking about self-doubt. Isn't it normal for most people to have self-doubt?
Absolutely. I don't think there's a person on the planet that doesn't go through self-doubt. Yet the thing is this, you can doubt yourself. That's absolutely okay. We talk about imposter syndrome. Yet the fact of the matter is there's some people who will keep themselves in that doubt, and ultimately what it does is it keeps them stuck. And that's why the inner worth is so valuable when you finally begin to understand that your inner worth ultimately can never be compromised. So can you imagine if you knew that for certain? So you didn't doubt that, you didn't believe that maybe it's possible, you actually knew 100% that your inner worth is never compromised. When that happens, now there's nothing really to doubt, because you know that you are perfect exactly the way you are already. There might be some behaviors you might want to change just to get you different results, but ultimately your inner worth can never be compromised. What happens to so many people is, though they've put up so many facades, we have to play so many roles in this life we call as a human. 1 minute you're playing the role of a father, or a mother, or a brother, or a sister, or a daughter, or whatever it may be, or all these different roles, the businessman, the businesswoman. And people are taking on all of these different roles, which ultimately cover up who you really are.
You're mentioning entrepreneurs. Do you think that an entrepreneur is successful once he or she can overcome self-doubt?
Absolutely, without a doubt. It doesn't mean that from time to time they might not doubt themselves. I find myself doubting myself every so often as well. Yet, what they've learned though is that self-doubt can actually be used to their advantage, because they could be just questioning themselves, which could open themselves up to looking at different perspectives. Because so many people keep themselves back simply because they think they've learned something, and potentially they have. Yet if they're not willing to potentially unlearn it so as to learn something new, they could be holding themselves back. So without a doubt, any entrepreneur, any successful entrepreneur, and again, I understand that success is very subjective as well, because people have put different meanings on it. Yet what I truly believe a successful entrepreneur has, a successful individual ultimately understands what true freedom is, and that true freedom can never happen until there's an understanding of what's going on up here with their mindset, which isn't just confined to here. Mindset is everywhere. Ultimately, mindset is consciousness, which is always, always expanding. That's why there's so much more always to learn.
Most entrepreneurs live and work in a silo. Do you think it's necessary for them to have a mentor?
I don't think that there's an entrepreneur on the planet that does it completely on her own or his own. There are always mentors that they have around them in one way or another. Sometimes it's family members. I was just talking to one of my client family members today who recently lost someone in their family who was their first mentor. And it was a family member. Sometimes they are really good friends that we truly, truly trust, and they can be mentors as well. And then you have people potentially like myself who do this for a living professionally, and they can turn towards them. Why is that? Simply, it really just is about not telling someone what they have to do, yet it's opening up new perspectives and understanding as well when it comes to success, living a full spectrum of your life. I think one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs that I see is that they're so focused on their business that they've lost themselves. They've created an identity about themselves that's very much attached with their business, forgetting that they have a whole life over here that involves relationships, that involves health, that involves spirituality, that involves personal growth. If you are so focused on one area of your life only, then potentially you're missing out on you're just missing out on a whole spectrum of your life that could be so fulfilling, yet you've just placed all of your eggs in this basket with your business. And the biggest challenge with that is that any business, anything that is of this world, can be gone in a flash. And if you've rely so heavily on that being your success, giving you the happiness, if that's gone all of a sudden, now what happens? And if you haven't prepared yourself mentally for that, that could be very, very destructive.
And moving from entrepreneurs to leadership, a very trendy word today, leadership. What, in your opinion, makes a good leader? Do you believe that we're going through a phase where, for example, if you go into a company, a corporate, everyone wants to be a leader. So how can you have all these leaders in one business and none of the rest?
I don't think it's a matter of everybody wanting to be a leader. There might be a lot of people, yet everybody has their strong traits. I think a very good leader is someone who's a visionary, who has a vision, and then surrounds themselves with good people. Surrounds themselves with people who have different traits, and what they do is they implement and they put people in certain positions that enhance those traits. When you can do that, and you're surrounding yourself with good people with different traits, so they have strong points that they're bringing to the business, bringing to the organization, I think that is absolutely vital. Not only that, leaders today as well, and again I say this with the utmost respect, in the next 3 to 5 years, without an understanding and having a good grasp of emotional intelligence, what we're talking about, mindset, and understanding the different types of people coming through their organizations as well. So whether they're a Gen Z, whether they're a Gen X, Gen Alpha now coming through, understanding that, understanding the differences between them. You know, an 18-year-old today is not the same 18-year-old I was. It's completely different. And this is because consciousness is expanding. Not because anything is right or wrong. The youngsters come into the world with a completely different perspective. The example I like to use is this. You don't need to teach a child how to use a mobile phone. They know how to use it already because they've come into this world with that consciousness. So a good leader is going to have a very good grasp on emotional intelligence and how to apply that throughout their organization.
How would a good leader identify those that are good for a business? And in the same way, how would he identify those who won't help a business move forward? And how would he move them along?
I think first and foremost, they need to know themselves first. They need to know the values that they hold for themselves personally. Have they looked at the values of the organization that they're running and making sure that they are aligned? Once an organization identifies those values, then decisions become very easy in the sense that when you see that you have someone in the organization that is not aligned with those values, it's going to be quite an easy decision to then say, listen, this is someone we keep on board, this is someone that we don't keep on board. Yet, it is very important, I believe, even in the very beginning, when I'm working with someone who is just starting up, for instance, it's very important for them to look at these values. You know, for instance, let me give you an example, you know, what I see with entrepreneurs as well, and a lot of individuals, is that they're in business. They originally started out their business because they wanted more freedom. They wanted to have fun because they enjoyed what they're doing. And you know, 3 years down the road, if even 3 years, they've lost sight of this. It's no longer become fun. It's become frustrated. It's become stressful. And again, it's really interesting because this intertwines with their beliefs. What do they believe? Every individual, up to a certain extent, has been programmed from a very young age, in one way or another, through our parents, through our teachers, through the people we surround ourselves around. And one thing that's really interesting in the entrepreneurial world is, more often than not, we're spoken to about how stressful being an entrepreneur is, how many sacrifices you need to make as an entrepreneur, how you need to suffer as an entrepreneur, how you need to struggle as an entrepreneur. And you hear this over and over and over again. And you hear it so much that it actually becomes a belief. So now you've begun to associate success with struggling, with suffering, with being stressed out, with sacrifice. Yet in actual fact, it doesn't have to be that way. I am not saying that you're not going to go through your challenges. You will go through your challenges. Yet if you can actually learn to go through your challenges with an element of joy, with an element of still fun, knowing that these are just growth spurts. This is where you grow as a person. Because ultimately, that's what it's all about anyways. It's not about the end result. So many individuals are lost in the end result and setting the goals and having to achieve these goals, when ultimately, what you want, as much of a cliche as this is, the cliche of all cliches, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the whole process. If you are enjoying it, then it's irrelevant of the result. The result will come on its own because you're aligned with that. But what's the sense of moving towards a goal and being miserable the whole time through? And not only that, you end up making other people miserable as well.
Do you believe that as someone moves towards one's goal, one starts to lose satisfaction? And is that why, for example, startups would usually have an exit strategy? Yeah,
they have an exit strategy, some want an exit strategy in the sense of, how are they going to sell and get out of the business? That's potentially. Yet, I see no relevance in the sense of, I see no sense in running a business or doing anything in your life that doesn't give you some sort of satisfaction. What is the sense of having a business and you're not enjoying it? I mean, does it make sense to wake up every day and not looking forward to what you're going to be doing, not looking forward to enjoying the process of where you're heading in your business, wherever you might be. And this is the thing with goals, you really don't want to hold on to things too tightly. And this is a great lesson for life as well. Like I said, you really don't want to hold on tightly to things that are of this world, because, like I said, they can be gone in a flash. We saw this through COVID. COVID, businesses disappeared in a flash. This can happen in relationships. This can happen in our health, in people's health. So it's really important to learn the detachment, so that you don't get lost in that, because if that becomes such a big part of your identity, I mean, we can use the example of elite athletes as well. One minute they're on top of the world, an injury comes along, and all of a sudden they're out of the picture. If they're not prepared mentally, that's a huge loss. That's because now their identity of being this elite athlete is gone. And they start questioning, who am I? One of the biggest questions that anybody can ask themselves, who am I? And this is where you really begin to understand the inner worth. You start to understand who you truly are. And when you begin to understand who you truly are, nothing can get in the way.
Many difficult questions, Ken. I'd like to take a look at you, at Ken.
Yeah.
How did you start up doing what you do today?
Actually, it was so many years ago. I got involved in network marketing, multi-level marketing, and part and parcel with multi-level marketing, network marketing, was personal development. And that's where I sort of really got introduced to it, and I started to, at the time, listen to DVDs. I was still listening to cassettes. At the time, so I was reading some books. I was listening to different speakers. And the nature of the business that I was in, the multi-level marketing, was putting me in front of groups of people on a weekly basis. So I started speaking, and I just started listening to these speakers and reading these books, and I was fascinated. And I started saying, I can't believe they don't teach us this stuff in school, because they don't. And they still don't anywhere in the world. For the most part, they don't. There's a little more, yet, and without a doubt, the information is much more available now. And I just got intrigued, and I said, how come they don't teach us this stuff in school? And that's what inspired me to keep going, because I said, you know what? I got to get this information to as many people as possible. And I just continued on there. I continued to delve into doing that. I continued to learning. I started attending conferences. I was attending events. And I just continued to learn. And that's what I've continued to do over the course of the last 20 years. 20 years plus, and I will continue to do. I'll be traveling very shortly as well to continue to learn and learn from these people who, I believe have a tremendous wealth of knowledge and in different areas. And the fact of the matter is, humanity is changing. And like I said, in the next 3 to 5 years, I really see some substantial changes happening to humanity as we know it. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Actually, it's probably going to be a huge leap we're going to see for humanity, the way I'm seeing it. And I just want to learn as much as I can so that I can pass this information on to other individuals who are open to learning it. Not everybody is ready for it yet. Yet I see it very, very, very powerful.
And are you saying this with regards to the impact of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, up to a certain extent, without a doubt. But there's a whole lot of questions there I could throw at you when it comes to artificial intelligence as well. It's another tool. I've actually taken the AI and I use it, I say authentic inspiration rather than authentic inspiration, because I truly believe authenticity, when applied, that's another great thing with a leader as well, is when a leader an individual can be authentic and drop all of the facades and not be worried about being vulnerable in a situation where maybe they don't have all the answers.
But can you really drop all the facades?
Can you really? Well, you can. As you're going about in the world, and as you're going about your everyday, you're going to be playing some roles without a doubt. But this is why it's so important to remember your authenticity. To drop those facades, yeah, you can learn to. That's where I like to call quiet time comes in, or meditation comes in. That's where you begin to drop those facades and tap into something that is much bigger than you, which is actually you. I like to call it the umami self, which essentially umami is the essence of deliciousness. So the umami self is the essence of deliciousness of who you really are, not all of these roles and facades that people are playing.
Ken, can you share with us something about yourself and your background? You have a Maltese surname, Attard.
Yes.
You told me you were born in Canada.
That's correct, you are.
Can you share something with our audience?
Sure, no problem whatsoever. Yes, I was born in Canada. My parents are both Maltese, so that they had emigrated in the 60s to Canada. I was born there, lived for 14 years there. And after 16 years in Canada, my parents decided that it was time to come back. Like I said, I was still 14 at the time, so there really wasn't much choice on my part. Although I knew Malta fairly well, we used to come and visit every couple of years for a vacation. So in my mind, I was coming on a permanent vacation. Lo and behold, did I not realize some of the early lessons that I would have to learn. I had to learn the language. So I did not know Maltese at the time. Now I know it, I understand it.
But you're more comfortable speaking English.
In this context, I'm more comfortable. Tifhimniex ħażin, nista' nitkellem bil-Malti, nista' nesprimi ruħi bil-Malti, mhix problema, l-aċċent hemm għadu, bniedem jinduna, però meta jiġi għal ċertu kliem meta qed nesprimi ruħi f'dal kontest, I just find it a little more easier in English sometimes to think that way. But I had to learn Maltese. I had to get my Maltese matriculation at the time, which I did. And you know, the schooling system was completely different to what I was used to. You know, I was used to a co-ed school, and I could go to school in a jeans and t-shirt. When I arrived here, I ended up in an all-boys school. I was in a uniform. And the academic level here was much higher. So I went from an above-average student in Canada to an average student here. But I made some amazing friends. Thankfully, I had my sport, which I was always quite into sport, so that helped me to integrate. So whether I was playing on the football team for the school, or it just helped me to integrate and be accepted a little more, which is always very useful at that age. Without a doubt, although there are many grown-ups who still are at adulthood and still want to find themselves attempting to fit in, attempting to, you know, be accepted. And this is where the self-worth comes in, because when you really understand that your self-worth can never be compromised, it doesn't matter if you fit in or not, it really doesn't matter. So yeah, so I came, and I've been here ever since. I've gone back a couple of times just for vacations. But I truly love it here, honestly. I mean, a lot of people ask me, you know, how come, you know, where do you prefer? I was young, I wasn't an independent adult. So there are certain aspects of living in Canada that I don't know as an adult. But I still find it absolutely wonderful here. I can find myself sitting in Gozo, for instance. I love to go up to Gozo, I've mentioned to you. I can sitting in Gozo at a kiosk near the sea, maybe doing some work, maybe writing something, and I remind myself, I go, you know what I'm doing right now and where I am right now, for some people, this is their dream vacation. And I'm blessed to be here and be able to live this every day if I want to. And this is what I encourage people to really begin to do in their lives, whatever it is in their lives, is to begin to see the beauty in their lives.
So really you're talking about going back to basics.
Yeah, I love simplicity, keeping things simple. People have complicated things. You want a formula for success? Keep things simple. Begin to understand what goes on, mindset, how your thinking affects everything. Be consistent in whatever you do, and be dedicated to it. And I can guarantee you, if you look at any time in your life when you felt you were being successful, I can guarantee you were being consistent and you were dedicated. Whether it was for your health, whether it was for your studies, whether it was for your relationships, you were consistent and you were dedicated. And you just kept things simple. Keep them simple. There's no need to complicate things. The minute you begin to do that, things begin to change. You see, everything in your world, I don't want to go too deep here, yet I think this is really important. Everything you are seeing in your world, outside of you, is a reflection of what you are seeing inside of you. So the minute you begin to go inside and begin to change some beliefs, which is going to affect your habits and what you're doing every day, your outside world begins to change.
So the theme you're talking about is all about positivity today.
Can I use a different
positive?
word? Yeah, positive is good. I tend not to talk about positive much, in the sense, I prefer to say it's really just about finding how to feel good. When you can think thoughts that make you feel good, things begin to change on the inside. But so many people are interested in feeling bad. They want to continue to think about the things that make them feel bad. They continue to watch things that make them feel bad, read things that make them feel bad. And if you're just going to continue to do that, you're going to look at the world and say, this is a horrible world.
Thank you very much, Ken, for coming to speak to us today. It's been a real pleasure. Lots of food for thought. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Sinjuri, jiena kont qed nitkellem ma' Ken Attard li huwa l-fundatur ta' Mindset Malta. Jekk għandkom xi mistoqsijiet bħas-soltu, ibatuhom permezz tal-WhatsApp fuq in-numru li jidher fuq l-iskrin. Jiena Hogg għal Net TV u nixtieqilkom il-ħadd tajjeb.